I'm back with another review. This review I'm really excited to make. Okay, so Sherlock Christmas Special, The Abominable Bride. I'm not gonna lie, I had massively high expectations for this episode because it was the kind of segue to sate our appetite until 2017, because otherwise it would have been a 3-year wait for content. So it's satisfied us for now. And pretty much what happened in the real world aspects, which, I mean, if you're looking for true action here, right, Sherlock went, in the space of 1 hour and 35 minutes, he went from a plane, wait for it, I know you're on the edge of your seat, to a car. So long and short of the distance he travelled over the space of the episode. Now I know you're just thinking, oh my gosh, action central, like this is the Mission Impossible of Sherlock. Yeah, I know, just calm yourself. So that's what was going on in the real world. Now, the rest of the action, the heart of the episode, was set in, as I kind of thought it might be, was set in the Mind Palace. Now, prepare yourself, guys. We are going into that most treacherous of lands. The no man's land of television. We are going into the spoiler territory, so put on your little tin hats and we'll begin. Tin hats? Yeah, conspiracy theories, right. Put on your little tin helmets. Let's go into the realm. So, just a brief overview. So, the Victorian elements of the episode were set in the Mind Palace. It was an amalgamation of Sherlock trying to use a case from the past in order to solve a case in the present. So it turns out that pretty much the case of Amelia Ricoletti, the Abominable Bride, is a direct parallel to Moriarty's case. Both shoot themselves in the head and now both seem to have come back. I thought it was really clever. It was so clever, and it's moments like that where the genius of Moffat just comes through tenfold. Using one of the lost Sherlock Holmes stories in order to create a direct relationship between the original source material and the modern update of Moriarty's death. It was so clever. It was ingenious, but then again, the whole of Sherlock is totally ingenious. It's why I love Stephen Moffat's writing. It's also kind of the genius of his writing. It works very well for Sherlock. It works perfectly. I don't think anyone could have done a better job of telling a modern story of Sherlock. Because him and Mark Gatiss, whenever they do interviews, they are so passionate. Sherlock is their brainchild, their baby, and they have such passion for it, which makes it even better. Where it starts to become a point of contention is when you look at his writing for Doctor Who. To me, it becomes very much... Oh, sorry. It becomes very much... It has a lot of elements. Whenever Stephen Moffat writes an episode, there are a lot of elements. You need to use a lot more brain power. You need to think a lot more, which works for Sherlock. I like it for Doctor Who, but I can see why people would say they prefer Russell T Davies, because his run of Doctor Who was just so much fun and it was suitable for kids as well as grown-ups. Whereas Sherlock's. Yeah, Sherlock's Doctor Who is rather a bit different because it doesn't exist. Moffat's writing for Doctor Who makes it slightly... You have to be slightly older. You have to have more of a brain process going on when you're watching it. Which doesn't mean you can't not think and enjoy it, but you'll just be confused as hell. So that's why, in my opinion, he works slightly better for Sherlock, which has a definite demographic which Doctor Who does not have. Anyway, moving on. Tangent aside. Yeah, I thought the whole elements with the using the case, Sherlock identifying himself as the 1895 Sherlock in order to be able to solve this case so he can solve the case of Moriarty. That was genius. And also it's quite clever having the Victorian elements as the Mind Palace, because it can be used again. It was so much fun watching how Sherlock would be done if it wasn't set in the modern day. If Moffat and Gatiss and I can't recollect the name of the director of this episode. If they ever want to turn their hand to try making a Sherlock set in its original context, it would be great. Just Martin Freeman was born to play John Watson. Benedict Cumberbatch was born to be Sherlock Holmes. Mark Gatiss was born to be Mycroft. Amanda Abington, born to play Mary. Rupert Graves, born to play Lestrade. Una Stubbs, born to play Mrs. Hudson. They all just fit their roles so perfectly, whether it's in the modern day or in the Victorian era. It was amazing. It was so clever, and every single actor put in 110%, and you could tell there was so much passion and excitement there that it was amazing. It was brilliant. And I did have high expectations, and each expectation has been delivered on, which epic. A few scenes I kind of liked. A few scenes that were my highlights of the episode. I would probably have to give one to the starting scene, where it's pretty much the beginning of A Study in Pink, but in its original context, which I loved, because the first episode was just so much fun introducing you to all of these characters. Now you've had 3 seasons to get to know and love these characters, so what would it be like if it was reimagined to fit more with the original source material? It was great. I loved it. Loved it. My second highlight was Moriarty reappearing on the crime scene. And just Andrew Scott is so much... Oh, I forgot to mention Andrew Scott. Andrew Scott, born to play Moriarty. There we go. He's so much fun. His performance is crackling with energy. He's one of the only actors that can manage to be completely funny, insane, and slightly intimidating all at the same time, which makes him perfect for Moriarty. And his interaction with Sherlock, whether it was in the Mind Palace within the Mind Palace, the Mind Palaceception, or during the last little segment where they return to the Reichenbach Falls, which he's just so much fun. And the chemistry between Benedict Cumberbatch and Andrew Scott is just... You can tell that there's so much fun and so much energy within that relationship. I loved it. I loved it. I love it. I love them. I love them. I adore them. Loves of my life. So I really enjoyed that. I loved the joke when they're standing at the edge of the precipice and Sherlock says to Moriarty, "I can see that your brain might be an equal of my own." And Moriarty goes, "Oh yeah, oh, well, I'm honoured." And Sherlock goes, "Yeah, but in the case of unarmed single hand-to-hand combat, you're going in the water." Short ass. I was wetting myself at that part. That's the thing I love about Sherlock. It makes you think, but it is so funny. There are some things that are so wickedly funny, and you're just sitting there, and I love it. Even though most of the comedy does usually come from the relationship between Sherlock and John, I even loved the scenes with Rotund Mycroft in the Diogenes Club, where he and Sherlock are making a wager on how long it's going to be before he dies. It's so funny. The dynamic is what makes it. Obviously what's being said is funny, but the dynamic, it is brilliant. I love it. I love it. And of course, John and Sherlock's relationship is a point of the comedy as well. Oh yeah, when they're sitting waiting for the Abominable Bride, and John starts questioning why Sherlock is the way he is, and Sherlock just goes, "Oh, I've never been so impatient to be attacked by a murderous ghost." It apart from being a good, thought-provoking episode, it was a really funny episode, which you just can't complain. Comedy, thought-provoking. It was great. It was great. And also a really good character insight, which I will get to in a minute. So, moving on from the performances, the cinematography was absolutely gorgeous, as per usual, which, BBC, you've got to stop making such gorgeous cinematography, because I'm holding other films up to your standard, and you have a considerably lower budget. Like, there are some films that don't have cinematography anywhere near as good as the BBC has recently, and it's crazy, and it's beautiful, and I love it. It's great. Cinema is an art form. I'm glad TV's returning to its status as an art form too. Yes. So, cinematography, gorgeous. I love the scene where they were in the living room of 221B, and the camera sort of pans around and you see the bride making the scene, and then it just sort of turns back to the living room and the reactions of the characters, which I loved. I love when they incorporate the actual set and they actually take you into the crime scene, as they did in A Scandal in Belgravia. I love that. I love that episode. My favourite episode. So that was cinematography, gorgeous, and also the way that they used temperature, because there were quite a few, well, it was quite gothic, to be fair, where it's not John, who's in the maze? Lady Carmichael, Sir Carmichael and the bride are all in this maze, and you can just hear the bride's voice, and you've got Lady Carmichael running through this maze, and you can see the mist, and the colour palettes are really cold. And as you probably gathered from my last review, I do love it when the cinematography gives you such an indication of the environment that you actually start to feel cold, or you start to feel hot, or you start to feel grimy because the environment is so dirty. There's something about that I find so distortedly beautiful, which the cinematography is delivering. It's delivering, people. So I loved that. Yeah, so we had that. We had the nightmare fuel of the decomposed corpse with worms and pretty much been entirely decayed. Sherlock digs her up and he's in the grave, and all you can hear is her starting to sing, the voice starting to sing, and then she sort of just, the skeleton just falls on Sherlock. Oh, that was nightmare fuel. Oh, that was horrible. Oh, yeah, definitely. There's more of an element to the gothic of this, which is probably why I like it. I do like a bit of the old gothic. So, anyway, yes, the message, well, I mean, does anyone actually know what was happening? It's taken me about 3 watchings, 3 viewings, and I'm still not entirely sure. But when Sherlock finally solves the case of the Abominable Bride, the fact that Ricoletti probably had help faking her own suicide in order to get revenge against her husband, and then having help from her friends to become an idea. That was genius. Even though, can we just have a moment to appreciate the fact that all of the women were dressed in outfits that looked like they were members of the KKK? Can we just have a moment to appreciate that? They were like in purple KKK gear. It's just like, was that intentional? You trying to say something? Moffat, really? But oh well. Moving on from that. Technically it does link to when Sherlock talks about Ricoletti had learned methods of fear during her time in America. So technically there could be a subliminal link to the KKK, which, comparing the suffragettes to the KKK, right, it's a new take on it. It's a new take. Not accurate at all, but you know, let's go with it. Yeah, the fact that all of these women they use a friend's death, they use her life, her actions, her death in order to become an idea. The Abominable Bride is an idea. She could be anyone. Anyone can be wronged and take revenge against a man that has abused them or not allowed them the most fundamental of their rights. Anyone can be that. So, in essence, you then have that parallel to Moriarty. He's dead, which I'm going to miss Andrew Scott if they don't use him again, but they'll be doing the character a disservice. I guess they could always go up to the Mind Palace, have a few scenes with Moriarty, because he'll never be dead there. But it's more, Moriarty's dead. The man is dead, but the idea is still alive, and the idea is what is going to become the problem, what is going to propel the plot forward in the next series, which I'm so excited for, 2017. Even though we'll have some setlock to tide us over until 2017. So we'll have a little bit of setlock. So it's the idea of Moriarty that survives, which is going to be really interesting. What I found perhaps more interesting was the character insight that we got during this episode. Because obviously you've got Sherlock and Moriarty's interaction. You've also, if you take into account the fact that all of the stuff that happens in the Victorian era is inside Sherlock's head. Everything that is said is what he believes. It's his interpretation of things, and the fact that he bases his own self-worth on how others perceive him. Like when he said, when Mary says, "Oh, I see you've been reading John's blog where you met," and Sherlock goes, "It helps if I read that stuff, because I'm always so much cleverer," which it does give a massive indication on how insecure Sherlock really is. He bases his self-worth on how others perceive him. If others don't see him as this genius like Mycroft doesn't, he doesn't like it. He gets very insecure, which is why he probably likes John, because John views him as this genius figure, which is exactly what Sherlock needs in order to be the man he is, to be the intelligent and just brilliant man. He needs others to view him as that brilliant man. And another thing that I thought was quite interesting was the way in which Sherlock finally admits that he's wronged people. He admits that he has wronged Janine and Molly Hooper. He's never admitted that before. It's the first real indication we have that he does acknowledge that what he's doing is wrong, which technically means he can't be a sociopath because he has a social he does technically have a social conscience, which one of the defining characteristics of a sociopath is that they don't have that. So it's interesting. It's interesting that he's developed as a character to acknowledge that the things he has done have been wrong. Like, he's pretty much been a complete dickhead to women for the past 3 seasons, Mary being the only exception because she is the wife of the man who idolises him. So, and he does think she's, well, Mary is so clever. She's brilliant. And that's why Sherlock is she's the only female character that Sherlock identifies as being on a level of intellect similar to his own, even though she's probably, in some ways she's probably more intelligent than Sherlock, which was probably quite intimidating to him. But it was also from looking at Mycroft. I mean, Mycroft is one of my favourite characters. He's amazing, and it kind of helps. He's played by Mark Gatiss, who is my absolute idol. Like, he's such a talented writer, comedian, director, and actor. I love him ever since the League of Gentlemen days. I adore him, and the fact that he's given Mycroft such emotional depth. You see in this episode, Sherlock is probably one of the only people that gets to Mycroft. Sherlock is extremely insecure. Many things get to him. Like, Moriarty is one of the most... He was one of the people that affected him the most. And you see with Mycroft, he doesn't have a particular social conscience, but his little brother is the one point of contention for him. He does want to protect Sherlock. He does love and care about his brother, and his brother is the only person that can have an impact on him, who can get under his skin, like when Sherlock isn't really cooperating with him, when Mycroft says, "Give me the about that, I'm back." Yeah, through the power of time travel, I have returned. Let there be light, because it's really got really dark. So, anyways, I was saying, when Mycroft asked Sherlock about the list, can we just talk for a moment about the fact that in order to get to the Mind Palace, Sherlock needs to enter a jug. Yep, he needs to get into a measuring jug. He needs to enter a drug-fueled state. A drug-induced state. So it isn't just something he can do on command. He has to nearly overdose in order to achieve this. And I thought it was really interesting how how agitated Mycroft starts to get with Sherlock when he won't cooperate with him the way he should be. And it was just, Mycroft does love his little brother, and he just wants to protect him, which, considering everything that happened in Reichenbach, you do get the sense that Mycroft is genuinely guilty for what he did. He genuinely feels guilty for letting Sherlock down, which is why he is becoming so overprotective of Sherlock, which he is becoming more of a human being. He can feel guilty, which is what Sherlock is able to do by the end of the episode. He feels guilty he's able to acknowledge that he's hurt these women, which would suggest that he's starting to feel guilty about it. It is something he thinks about, which means that both of them are developing as human beings. They're both developing a form of social conscience, which is brilliant. And I am so excited now to see exactly what that means for the characters. They are no longer these men without emotion, without feeling, without the ability to empathise or to sympathise. Sherlock is developing, and as is Mycroft. Both of them, you come out this episode feeling a little bit sorry for, because you realise they are both trying to do the right thing. Sherlock is so unbelievably insecure in himself, and Mycroft, he wants to protect his brother, and he feels guilty for what he has done. Series 4 is going to be really interesting for the character developments, because they've already had Sherlock and Mycroft have developed so much from that first episode. I'm really excited to see how it's going to progress, because Sherlock isn't just a machine without a heart. He's flesh and blood. He is a man, and he's developing as a human being. It's exciting. So anyway, that has been my review. Cinematography, absolutely phenomenal. The performances, trying to think of the word then. Yeah, the performances were astonishing, as per always. Each actor was absolutely born to play the character that they play. Which, on a side note, that was another stroke of genius that I really liked. The fact that when you get to the last little segment before the final end credits, where you think it's ended and then it goes back to the to Victorian 221B, and you are then, as an audience, given the possibility to question whether this Victorian creation is modern day Sherlock's mind palace, his own imagining of what type of man he would be if he was born and lived in the 1800s. Or you're also given the prospect that it's original source material Sherlock that is imagining the future, which it's just genius. The way this show makes you think, and it throws so many things at you, it's genius. It's something that Sherlock does unbelievably well, that some other shows they've tried to do, but they haven't been able to get the execution quite right, whereas Sherlock has done it first time. So I would give this episode a solid 9.5 out of 10. The only reason it isn't a 10 out of 10 is because I have a very definite idea of my ranking of each Sherlock episode, and I would say The Abominable Bride would be my second favourite. My favourite is Scandal in Belgravia, which I would give a 10 out of 10 to, and I think, although I love this episode and it is different, I'd still say Scandal in Belgravia, the storyline isn't it's easier to follow, and you get so much more character development from Sherlock due to his relationship with Irene Adler, which, you know, you get the development between the brothers in this episode and between Moriarty and Sherlock, but I felt that there was something slightly different about Scandal that I would put slightly above. So I'd give it a 9.5 out of 10. But that is it for my review, guys. I hope you've enjoyed it. Let me know down below what you thought of tonight's episode, because I can imagine this will be an episode that will polarise the fandom. There will be some that absolutely love it, and there'll be some that absolutely hate it. I don't really think there'll be many in the middle. So let me know what you thought down below. That's it for today, guys. I will be back later this week with a new segment on my channel. Cheeky little new segment. So I'm really excited. I will see you later this week. Bye, guys.